In the mid-14th century BCE, as Egypt basked in wealth and power, a royal woman emerged whose name would echo through the ages. Nefertiti, meaning the beautiful one has come, arrived in the historical record as the great royal wife of the young pharaoh Amenhotep IV, later known as Akhenaten. Her parentage remains shrouded in intrigue. She may have been the daughter of a high advisor who himself would briefly rule after Tutankhamun's death, or perhaps a princess from distant Mitanni, a foreign beauty whose very name hints at an arrival from afar. Still in her teenage years, Nefertiti married the crown prince and became Queen of Egypt when her husband ascended the throne in Thebes. Together they would preside over a chapter of Egyptian history as opulent as it was revolutionary, a time of reverent sunlight and sweeping change. Shortly into her husband's reign, an unprecedented religious transformation began to unfold. Amenhotep IV defied centuries of tradition by elevating a single deity, Aten the sun disk, above all others. In his 5th regnal year, he dramatically changed his name to Akhenaten, effective for the Aten, and in a matching gesture of devotion, Nefertiti assumed the additional name Neferuaten, beautiful are the beauties of Aten. This royal couple's shared renaming was more than symbolic. It heralded the new dawn of a new cult of light, with Aten's radiance at its center. By year 5, Akhenaten ordered the royal court to abandon Thebes. He chose a spot in Middle Egypt, a crescent of cliffs and desert bluffs along the Nile, to found an entirely new capital dedicated to Aten. They called it Akhetaten, Horizon of the Aten, known today as Amarna. Here, under the blistering sun, pharaoh and queen would orchestrate a profound religious and cultural revolution that set them apart from all who came before. The move to Amarna signaled a bold new beginning for Egypt's royal family. On boundary stele carved into the cliffs, Akhenaten and Nefertiti proclaimed this sunlit plain as the sacred domain of Aten. The city of Akhetaten rose swiftly, open-air temples without roofs so the sun's rays could directly bathe the altars, palaces adorned with blooming life in painted relief, and wide courts where their royal family worshipped beneath the sky. Nefertiti, as great royal wife, stood at the pharaoh's side not in meek deference, but as an active partner. On the walls of tombs and temples from this Amarna period, her presence is ubiquitous, depicted with a prominence no earlier queen had ever enjoyed. In one famous scene, carved on a domestic altar stela, Akhenaten sits with Nefertiti and their young daughters beneath the radiant sun. The Aten's rays cascade down as little hands offering Ankh symbols of life to the royal couple. The king and queen tenderly cradle their children, the family bathed in divine light. This intimate portrait, the royal family in casual affection, was a startling break from past artistic convention, a hallmark of the new Amarna style that favored naturalistic, even candid, human moments. By the 2nd decade of Akhenaten's reign, Nefertiti had transcended even the traditional bounds of queenship. Evidence suggests that the king elevated his great wife to serve as co-regent, effectively co-ruler of Egypt alongside him. In year 12 of Akhenaten's 17-year reign, reliefs show the royal couple acting in concert during ceremonial occasions, and an inscription, the so-called co-regency stela, may depict Nefertiti wearing the regalia of a pharaoh, equal in status to the king. She was already referred to in exalted terms: Great of Praises, Lady of all women, Mistress of Upper and Lower Egypt, titles that underscored her authority. Many scholars today believe Nefertiti's role was formally elevated, making her Pharaoh Akhenaten's partner in governance as well as faith. In statues and carvings, she appears with the double crown of rulership, and her cartouche, royal name emblem, has been found on blocks and fragments where one would expect a king's name. Indeed, at some point before Akhenaten's death, Nefertiti's own name seems to vanish from the records, only to be replaced by the name Neferuaten, a mysterious figure who is explicitly titled as ruling king despite being female. Historians continue to puzzle over the precise course of events in those final years at Amarna. One theory holds that Nefertiti assumed a new identity as Smenkhare, a shadowy co-regent who appears briefly in the record after year 12. However, this idea of Nefertiti masquerading as a male king is less supported by evidence. Modern analysis suggests Smenkhare was likely a distinct individual, perhaps a younger brother or son of Akhenaten who died prematurely, clearing the way for Nefertiti's sole rule as Neferuaten. What is clearer is that if Nefertiti held the reins of power after Akhenaten's death around 1336, she faced the monumental task of mending a fractured kingdom. Years of Aten-centric policy had upended Egypt's priesthood and populace. As ruler, the queen may have initiated a return to tradition, a prudent damage control to soothe the turmoil her husband's revolution had wrought. An intriguing inscription from that time records that Neferuaten ordered offerings to the long-neglected god Amun, imploring the old deity to come back and, quote, dispel the kingdom's darkness. Such a poignant phrase suggests that even the architects of Atenism recognized the spiritual void that needed filling. One can imagine the widowed Nefertiti, now a pharaoh in her own name, standing in the deserted courts of Karnak or Thebes, making supplication to Amun in hopes of reuniting their people under the old faith. It may have been Nefertiti, not her son-in-law Tutankhamun, who first lit the path back to Egypt's ancestral gods. In this narrative, the famous restoration under young Tutankhamun becomes the culmination of a process that Nefertiti or Neferuaten set in motion years before. Archaeology lends some weight to Nefertiti's possible reign. Dr. Zahi Hawass and other Egyptologists have pointed to clues in Tutankhamun's tomb, delicate Shabati figurines and inscriptions that bear feminine forms as evidence of a female pharaoh immediately preceding Tut. Those artifacts, along with scenes of Nefertiti smiting enemies, a role exclusively reserved for kings, strongly hint that she was the elusive Neferuaten who ruled between Akhenaten and Tutankhamun. If she did hold the throne for a brief time, likely only a few years between 1334 and 1332 BCE, Nefertiti's reign saw the sunset of Amarna's experiment. The capital Akhetaten fell into decline, the court likely relocating back to Thebes, and the delicate transition back to orthodoxy was begun. By around 1332 BCE, a child king, Tutankhaten, later Tutankhamun, took power, guided by senior advisors. Nefertiti's story, however, grows hazy at that threshold. Did she live on as queen regent for Tutankhamun? Did she die and receive hurried burial as a pharaoh, her legacy then quietly erased? The answers remain elusive, but the scenario underscores her extraordinary journey, from a royal bride in Thebes to the visionary queen of Amarna, to perhaps the sovereign of Egypt in her own name. It is a trajectory unparalleled, reinforcing Nefertiti's image as a woman of formidable influence and enigmatic fate. For the ancient Egyptians who came after, Nefertiti and Akhenaten's legacy was a troublesome one. Their religious upheaval was considered heresy, a disruption to Ma'at, the cosmic order, and subsequent pharaohs had little mercy for the memory of the Amarna royals. King Horemheb, last of the 18th dynasty, omitted Akhenaten, Smenkhare, and Tutankhamun entirely from his king list, effectively erasing them from official history. Later Egyptian chronicles never mention Nefertiti at all. To the pharaohs of the 19th dynasty, she was an unspeakable figure, part of a cursed interlude of sun worshippers best forgotten. Akhenaten was vilified as the heretic king, his monuments defaced, his name chiseled out, as his great wife and possible successor Nefertiti's name and images too were caught in the crossfire of whitewashing. At Karnak and Luxor, archaeologists have found blocks from Aten temples later torn down and reused as fill-in for new construction. The reliefs of Nefertiti's face and form literally turned inward, hidden for millennia. Thus, for over 3,000 years, Nefertiti lay in obscurity. No classical Greek or Roman writings speak of her. Unlike Cleopatra, whose legend stayed alive, Nefertiti was effectively forgotten by the world. a once radiant queen, now invisible beneath the sands and rubble of Amarna. Her resurrection began in the modern era with one of the greatest archaeological finds of the 20th century. On the 6th of December 1912, a German expedition digging in the ruins of Amarna made a breathtaking discovery in the abandoned workshop of the sculptor Thutmose. Buried in the dust and debris lay a stunning painted bust of Nefertiti, shoulders upright, long graceful neck and head crowned with an unusual flat-top blue headdress. The face, even after 3,300 years in the ground, gazed serenely forward with half-lidded eyes and a slight confident smile. Ludwig Burckhardt, the lead archaeologist, immediately knew they had found something extraordinary. He said, "Description impossible," he wrote in his diary, struggling for words to capture the sculpture's beauty. The bust of Nefertiti would soon become a global sensation, an icon of ancient elegance rivaled only by the mask of Tutankhamun. It was spirited out of Egypt as part of the German team's share of finds, and for a decade it sat mostly hidden in a private collection in Berlin. Only a single poor photograph was published, giving the world a fleeting glimpse of Nefertiti's visage. Then in 1922, Howard Carter's discovery of Tutankhamun's intact tomb ignited worldwide Egyptomania. With the eyes of the world on Egypt's golden past, the Nefertiti bust was finally unveiled to the public in 1923 at the Berlin Museum. She caused an immediate sensation. Here was an ancient queen, forgotten in dusty tomes, now brought to life in full colour. Her reddish-brown skin tone, the elegant painted cosmetics, that distinctive crown and almond eyes, an embodiment of timeless beauty. In an era dazzled by the new image of Tutankhamun, Germany proudly presented Nefertiti as an answer to Britain's boy king. The allure of their Egyptian treasure was a graceful female face, exquisitely preserved.